Okay, what's going on, everybody? I am Bakari, and I am joined by Matt. So, hey, Matt, do you go out open, Matt, or just Matt?
Just Matt, and just Matt, pretty much. Yeah.
Okay, all right, cool.
Yeah, that's
Well, so Matt and I are training in jiu-jitsu. I am a purple belt at 10th Planet, and Matt is a blue belt. And Matt, where do you train?
I kind of train everywhere. Honestly, what's kept me in martial arts is kind of just my friends. Like, even if I'm, like, bummed out, not doing anything, somebody will just hit me up, like, be like, hey, dude, what are you doing? Or why are you being a lazy ass? Or come out and train. Like, it's just kind of what we do, you know?
Right. And that brings us to our subject today. What we're going to talk about is training in different gyms and how that affects us in terms of our progression, pros and cons. As I mentioned before, I'm a purple belt with 10th Planet. However, I've trained in many different places, and I know I'm talking with Matt, and he drops that by our academy a lot of times at 10th Planet, and I know he trains in a lot of places as well. So, Matt, how many places currently are you training in now?
I don't know. I don't know if there is, like, a steady place that I'm going mostly right now, but before back, a couple of years ago, like how you just mentioned, 10th Planet was one of my steady gyms. And back when I moved to Jacksonville, that was really the main gym that I stuck with for 2 years, like when I came back to Jacksonville. Before that, when in Tampa, I was in a college club. And our group was composed of, like, it was that kind of actually influenced me later on, since our group there in our college club was composed of a lot of different, like, belts, different experience levels, different people from all sorts of different gyms, because it's a university club. Anybody can just walk on, even, like, people who have never done jiu-jitsu before. They can come in. It's like the pool. The matches, wrestling matches there, pure wrestlers, bros who just want to lift and come along. The match just there. So that's kind of where I've been influenced. And from there, people told me if you want to get a little better, for more technique, you need to go check out some gyms. Because gyms are where you have, like, a good stable level of skilled training partners, people who know what they're doing to an extent, with, like, an instructor who's, like, monitoring stuff, so maintaining safety, etc.
Right. So how was that training with that eclectic mix of people with so many different styles and ways of training?
Oh, it's chaotic sometimes, but my buddy said, like, the exchange, like, kind of like how it's, like, everybody kind of teaching everybody. He felt like he got a lot of better during that time. And I would say, like, sometimes during certain exchanges, it's not necessarily the amount of volume of information but you have, like, kind of sometimes when you've been doing the same thing for a while in a rut, you just need something to spin the wheel again. Like, having, like, new perspectives kind of helps us give that light bulb moment. Like, usually something people say about, like, a guy I'm a big fan of who talks about jiu-jitsu theory a lot. He talks about Ryan Hall. Something people say about Ryan is he has common sense, which is actually pretty uncommon. So he says, like, the idea of Occam's razor is, like, we should sometimes the best solution is the simplest solution. So someone point out something that's simple, but in their eyes, but not necessarily simple in our eyes, just because we don't see it because of our way of thinking and the way we look at the world. It can just be opened up by new perspectives.
Right. And do you feel sometimes that academies sort of get in the way of that in terms of not allowing you to get from point A to point B as effectively as you could if you just trained on your own?
It really depends to an extent, because there's, like, kind of in the sense that everybody does have to be following a general kind of guideline. Otherwise, the class gets a little bit wild and everybody's doing everything. And especially if you'll get really, really lost in that sort of discovery process if you're going into that style of learning for that day. Perhaps like a little bit semi-live experimentation or improvisation, whatever. I'm just viewing that from a music perspective. But as far as things getting in the way, that would be more applicable perhaps to the older days, I guess, where people would be like, oh, you're doing that 10th planet technique, what's that, rubber guard? Or vice versa nowadays, you'll see, ironically, it's the other way. Oh, you're going only for leg locks. Oh, you're only passing, or oh, you never play leg locks, or whatever. It's all just grappling, and it's all just kind of martial arts. So, in the sense, I think that Ryan connects, like, the way he talks about striking is the same way he talks about jiu-jitsu. Like, when he talks about frames and distance management and range, those are all, like, he tries to use, like, universally applicable principles. And by, like, having these, like, broad categories, that kind of helps us have, like, a guideline, if you will, to classify things and find a general path to move forward as we're playing the game.
Right. And you know, I started really just like you when I was younger. I started off training on my own. We moved around. My dad was in the Army, and then we moved around so much, I wasn't able to settle into a stable martial arts home. So I was always training by myself. You know, trying to. And this was the period of karate. I didn't get into judo until 97, 98. And I was only there for a year before my school disappeared. And then with, you know, me being in the Army and then moving from place to place, I was always training at different schools. So, you know, I've had that experience of also, you know, running into a lot of different various systems that kind of built upon each other. But at the same time, too, I've noticed that even in the gyms that they do have a stable program and it's a systematic, rigid approach to training, you still, and I think most guys still go out and search for things that they can bring and incorporate into whatever system that they're in. You know, even, you know, the 10th planet system where we have so many different techniques, you know, I still look at other people doing other things and try to incorporate that into my game. So I still think that, you know, it's not all one way or the other. You know, it's still a mix and a blend of different varieties and styles that you try to incorporate in terms of jiu-jitsu techniques, etc.
Oh yeah, that's something great that I've heard before. Like, you can learn, like craftsmen, for example, like welding and dentistry, the medicine. Even when you look into the arts, like there's music, and you can go into piano, clarinet. You can go into so many niches of a category. So people, the beauty about society is people can go on all of these different tangents, and some people go way, 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 way further down the rabbit hole than others. Like Eddie Bravo, for example, on the lockdown, and we could say perhaps Ryan Hall on the 50-50. He's very experienced with that. That's why he's, if anybody goes in that position with him, he's generally able to outclass them so far. As far as what we've seen. So in that sense, we can see that, like, almost, well, many people, you can learn from almost everyone, regardless of their background, their intelligence level, whatever, their coaching. They've probably gone down, if they've put enough of time and effort in the right direction into the art, then they've gone down some direction. It might not be a direction which has led to competitive success or something that may have a broad game, or like somebody might just have like really, really good side control escapes when they have the underhook, or a really good baseball bat choke, or something like that. Audrey Gracie's cross collar choke. But everyone has some sort of valid opinion, and like, I mean, not opinion, but like some sort of value, can bring some sort of value, which is great. That's why we have civilization. And as you mentioned, like karate, that's something great too, because it's funny how it's disappearing, but everything's kind of going full circle there. That Ryan actually recommended, because what was it? I was listening to the podcast with John Danaher and Lex Friedman, and I've kind of heard this idea that in order to be great or exceptional, if you want to be like the best, you, of course, most of us are not going to get there, but if you want to be the best that you can be, you need to be doing something different from what everybody else is doing. Mm-hmm. All the stuff below that as well, but something different. Like George GSP kind of pioneered shoot boxing. Mm-hmm. Right, just usually their training methods, there's something very different. And karate is something that's been kind of ignored. So during our time periods, we just go back and forth. So before boxing, like BJJ was popular because people had that hold of not having a ground game at all. And then later on, whatever, strikers became dominant as well, again, because strikers picked up jiu-jitsu. And now grappling is becoming dominant again because of wrestling, etc. And what we're seeing now again is like, while boxing was dominant before, karate is becoming dominant again. Mm-hmm. Because there are certain people who are just comfortable playing the very, very far long range now. Like,
yeah, and especially, you know, growing up, I grew up in the 80s, you know, that was my formative period. And, you know, let's say every Friday and Saturdays, you have, you know, they would have Kung Fu night on Fox. And then Saturday morning,
you had the cool. Like when Chuck.
Yeah. So I grew up watching those things, trying to emulate that, you know, the Karate Kid, that era. And
awesome.
In reality, a lot of people poo-poo karate because of, let's say, the McDojo era, where they think that, you know, it's cookie cutter, etc. But back in, you know, my day, where people were really taking it very seriously and they were using it as a means of self-defense, it was an entirely different situation than what you see now with people. Well, now you have people like Lyoto Machida. He's a little bit phasing out of the scene, or fading out of the scene rather, but those kind of people kind of brought it back to the forefront. I think his name's Stephen Thomason. Is that his name? In the UFC?
Yeah, Steve Thompson.
Yeah,
Steve Thompson. That's what I was talking about. I've actually recently drove up to train with them for 2 weeks to prepare for the IKF that just happened.
Okay, how was that? How was the training with him, and then also with the IKF tournament or bout?
It's great. So that, sorry to bring it up again, but Mr. Hall it kind of inspired me onto this. I did have aspirations before for kind of striking, but every time it felt like I was kind of ramming my head against the wall, so as to speak. And it was the exact same scenario, learning a lot of things I've noticed in my life with piano, where when I was trying to improvise, first I just ran my head against the wall. Then I realized maybe I have to think different. Mm-hmm. So that was like piano to make it enjoyable again and find it my own. I started simple, like playing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star again, but used the fundamentals and then like played songs, and I added improvisation and that sort of thing. For wrestling, I guess like my coach kind of laughed at me for this, but I was the kid who would like read a wrestling book, like one of those old manuals, like I borrowed them from the library. Yeah. There's one that's actually really good. It's called Winning Wrestling Moves. Winning Wrestling Moves by Tom Brands. Mm-hmm. That one you can actually find really cheap on thrift books or Amazon, probably like $5 or $10, honestly. And I always see it at Barnes & Noble. Anyway, wrestling, I ironically didn't really get actually like skilled until I did jiu-jitsu. And I did jiu-jitsu. When I started jiu-jitsu, I ended up going back into wrestling so I could get better at jiu-jitsu again.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Yeah, I do the same thing. I get the old books of wrestling, judo, And I even watch old videos of the old judo guys, with their techniques, and I'm still able to pull out things, in our current time, because a lot of those things, people think that you can't use, or maybe they're outdated or outmoded, but they actually, are effective when you try to use them in class. It's you have to pick and choose and see what works. But I understand what you're talking about, because I like that cerebral aspect of BJJ as well, and trying to pick and fine tune what's going on, and try to use that to elevate my game, to see what other people aren't doing. So I understand as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it's not even moves sometimes, but there's just like some idea or some little nugget in there that'll, like, for example, like Jack Dempsey's falling step, where you're imagining like you're kind of falling over yourself. Well, you don't actually do that when you punch, because then you're stumbling over your base. Kind of like me, because it was the first time competing, so I was stumbling over my base at times when while you don't do that when you punch, it teaches you the mechanic of properly rotating yourself, so your punches are fully extended and you have proper range. And what's interesting about that is those things come back in full circle. Ironically, that concept from boxing they were talking about at Thompson's while I was training there. And the falling step they use as everybody like has that push step, right? Where you're kind of shuffling by pushing the back foot and taking a little step forward. But something that's generally taught or called incorrect is like stepping with the back foot first to go forward.
Right.
But at Thompson's they have the full step, so you're kind of pretending like you're falling over yourself and leading with a punch. So your back foot drags forward first. And most people would be like, now why would you do that? You're off base, your feet go close together. But the reason he does that is because you don't have that push. There's completely no telegraph, and he can cover a lot more range by kind of using the pendulum step.
Okay. Well, I guess we talked a little bit about the positive things as far as, going from different gym training at different places, etc. What would you say are some of the things that maybe not negative, but maybe are a few cons in terms of training at different gyms and maybe not having a home gym that you're situated with?
Oh, yeah. There's plenty of cons as well. I would say you don't have the same access to steady, stable group of training partners. This can vary if you have a pod of people you already train with, and that can help pay for that. Or if you have like a network of people who you have mutual trust with. Because the main issue people have generally when they travel around is some people at like old school gyms are like, oh, let's show we're the best gym in town and beat the crap out of this guy. Team rivalries or silly things like that. But other than that, yeah, that would be the main thing. And then like if you're unstructured or unmotivated on the day, or you don't have a drilling plan, that could be an issue. Which that's a blessing and a curse. It depends on the day. It's good to have both. Again. Yeah. So as a nomad, it's definitely beneficial to do classes. Like,
do you consider yourself a Ronin, in terms of your training by going from different place to place and always seeking out different things, or it's just your creative expression in terms of trying to build a certain aspect of martial arts for yourself?
I think it's a bit of both, honestly. It's kind of just happened to be this way. Things just have turned out that way, I guess.
Yeah.
Honestly, like, when I haven't felt like training at all, like sometimes during those specs, like before I would just not train. Now there's, I don't know, now I just end up training, so. I think just the way the pieces have fallen into place. Maybe I'm a Ronin for now. Maybe I'm not later. Maybe I've been.
You're well connected because as I said, I've trained in a lot of different places here in our area as well. I've been at many different schools, and it seems as everyone that I know, it seems that those people, whether it's at the beaches or in Jacksonville or Clay County, whatever school it may be. And I've seen your Instagram. I've seen you train with different people. And I said, wait, I know this guy, and the guys that you're training with. And so that connection that you've been able to build by training at different schools, has that benefited you in some way, or maybe perhaps?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely, very, very much. Like, being able to travel, like, I've had friends, like, who've been, like, so generous. They've been like, oh, just crash at my place if you need to stay here. And that's all for, like, tournaments, like, whenever I need to compete or need a place to crash. If, working for combat night, sometimes I travel and do that. And then Arte Suave lately, I've been working with them as well. So having a place to train and being able to cross-train, too, with their gyms, too.
Yeah.
That's great. All the people. That mainly started from Tampa, where I started making other friends in jiu-jitsu there, and just going to seminars. Oh, a big thing we did back then that helped was we started doing intercollegiate seminars and then tournaments. I just wanted to have more competition experience, honestly.
Right.
Because at that point, tournaments were like out of my budget as a student, so we decided to why not organize our own. And what was great is Professor Ricardo Laborio from Orlando decided to become a part of that, and he helped us out. At the end of my junior year, I think, we had a huge seminar. Bakari was there, Bakari Matuda. There were like free rap jobs for the competitors. Jordan Moore competed too. It was from Gracie and Black Belt. It was great. There were a bunch of people. Bakari Matuda, Rodolfo Vieira was there. Another part that I've gotten with networking is probably Orlando. With Matt Ferriello's open mat, like I started going to that because during COVID, I think there was one small point where all the training areas were closed. Like there were still a bunch of secret ones going on, but there was a little point where all of them were closed. Yeah. And Matt is pretty crazy. So he was still running open mats down in Cocoa Beach at maybe I won't name. I'm pretty sure Frank doesn't give a crap. Off the grid, we had a bunch of COVID sessions, and then it was amazing. It's one of the best things I ever did, and we had some really good times down there. And then they started having the open mats at different places. Oh, sorry?
No, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, we started having the open mats at different places, and more people started joining. At first, it was a lot of big dudes, but, like, after that, like, I met more people in competitions, and, like, whenever I compete, I'm like, I've never had, like, people my way, so, like, I want those people to train with me. They're good. I see they're good competitively. Like, I want to learn what you have, and then I want to get some of what I have. Let's help each other get better, so... since I had training partners in Tampa too, we'd meet up in the middle sometimes in Orlando, especially when COVID was going on a little bit. Like, that was a just straight steady spot. And so far, Orlando's central, so that's where a lot of people are meeting. Yeah. And then Tampa had a big open mat like that too. It would be good to have that culture everywhere, honestly.
Yeah.
At least one open mat.
And speaking of the weight as well, I think in the last roll that we had that I posted, I believe I said I saved you around as 120 to 130. Is that where you're around?
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. And I'm 194, and I know that even with certain gyms, you can have sometimes all big guys, or everyone can be really small. And as a person who, depending upon your size, is all relative. That may not be the best place for a person, so getting out and finding other training partners as well may be a good reason to, often travel to other gyms, because
that's a big reason for me. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I would definitely bring up a story in a minute about that.
Yeah, because even at 194, I've ran into gyms where there are guys where the majority of them were bigger than I was, and that was real hard to deal with. Always being on the bottom, always facing. It's like it's the closer you get to the size. Like I would be one of the biggest small guys, and so I would have to go with the big guys all the time. I couldn't really go with the guys who were 130 or 140, 150 because it would be a sizable difference. However, when you have guys who were 260, 300, 6'6", all those different sizes, sometimes it would be difficult to deal with that. It turns into more of a strength roles as opposed to learning and trying to get technique.
Right. And what I would say is my main issue with that dilemma is efficient use of training time. That would be a thing, and that's kind of a gripe with warm-ups as well. Like if you want to work out, then you can kind of just lift weights or work out at normie gym, regular gym.
Yeah.
But like if I want to work on martial arts, like which it's hard. Like it's hard for people to make like time. Like you want to make efficient use of your training time. You want to be working on your skill development. And this is not my opinion. This is from Coach John Danaher. And if you want to be efficient with use of your training time, something in the book jiu-jitsu, there are like two scenarios there that we could avoid. Like you're saying, like how big guys sometimes just want to like hold you on top or something like that. Well, that's also applicable to like big guys just like holding you in close guard, or not even big guys or small guys. It doesn't really matter. It's just the idea of knowing that you need both the pressure/pinning style game where you're holding them, and the other side, which is being able to move. Otherwise, when you're facing someone of similar skill level, you're not just going to be able to hold them there. But at the same time, if you're a lighter guy and you only move and you only work your guard retention, you're not going to have many submissions or much pinning pressure.
Right.
Which is a bad thing. But another thing, so going back to efficient use of our time, and you can see I got a notepad here. I'm jotting my ideas as I go. But two situations we'd like to avoid are, which kind of stall, are like just like holding people in close guard. That's one thing. But I would cite the Ribeiro brothers, Salo and Sanjay.
Yeah.
How do you say it?
I think it's Janshi, but I might be incorrect.
Yeah, yeah. The Ribeiro brothers, anyway. But more important than who they are is their reasoning for not letting beginners in their actually first 1 to 2 years until they get their blue belt, they can't play close guard. And there are a few other schools who do this, but their reasoning behind this is that you don't develop the proper hip movement. And why? Because even in close guard, when you want to attack, when you want to sweep, say I want to go for a Kimura, what do? Need to do for an optimal even Kimura or triangle? You need to shift your hips to create an angle, right? To create a posture break. Kazushi, you need angle. So hip movement requires an open guard, and without the open guard, it's just not going to be there. And if you only play close guard, you won't be able to develop guard retention, which requires hip movement again.
Right. Yeah.
So that's one thing. And the other situation. Oh, sorry.
Oh no, I was saying, and he's a proponent of the I guess the diamond system with the knee to the elbow in terms of making sure no one can pass your guard.
Oh yeah, the knee elbow connection. Yeah. That's.
But go ahead, continue.
Yeah, that's a great concept. That changed my concept a huge amount. And that's applicable both in gi and no gi. For just guard retention. Yeah, just maintaining that active shield. So when they're passing, anyway. it helps prevent your knee elbow connection. Actually, by the way, is just another way of saying preventing them from getting inside position. Because when I have my elbows closed, then they can't get the inside position, underhooks, inside
Yeah.
back to side. That's just from wrestling.
Yeah,
But
particular
anyway,
edges.
continuing on. Another scenario we'd want to avoid that people say is two people being on their knees. Unless you're working your knee wrestling, I guess. But that's kind of weird because you don't have the footwork.
Yeah.
Anyway, so one thing that's good to communicate if you have someone bigger is context and timing for being explosive. Because it's okay. It's not wrong to be explosive. It's just knowing when to and when not to. Like, if you have someone's arm like extended between your legs or something like that, like where you could crank a lever. Just body aware. If they don't have that body awareness, which can only be developed through practice or intentional practice, then they probably shouldn't be. You probably should be limiting explosive movement. And how would we limit explosive movement? We limit variables. So, jiu-jitsu, like if you look at chess in a game, and this is from the podcast with Lex again, there are like, how many is it? It's like more than the number of atoms on, I don't know, on the planet or something like that. Or was it? Yeah, more than the numbers of of atoms on a planet for the numbers of moves and possible in a chess game. So how is it possible for a computer to compute through all those millions of thousands of variables? That's not really what it's doing. So what the computer does is it has heuristics, and heuristics are, instead of like having this formula for going through things, it just narrows down the options like a tree branch. You're going funneling. You're funneling down your opponent's options so they have less and less and less, and you have more. But so jiu-jitsu, when you're both standing, you have like a million different options, and then when you're on the ground, you slowly have less as you're passing the guard. As you're on mount, they have less and less escapes. As their arms are here, now they have less escapes. So that's Danaher's idea, like why he likes drilling reverse, like kind of from the ground up, teaching people pin escapes first, and then.
And we can definitely benefit from those systems. I know that, I depended also or looked extensively at the Danaher systems and using those heuristics, those different tools that you can have, a set of tools that you can use to apply to a set of situations that helps you deal with a broad framework of what people are doing. It's something that I think you won't get in one particular system. You have to look outside of what you're dealing with to find those different tools. It's just something that we have to deal with. Another question I have for you is in terms of, say for instance, if you're at a particular gym, some people, like say for instance, when I used to box, we had a pro that was at our gym that the trainer, he spent a lot of time with. And as you would advance, if he saw you were there, he saw you working a lot, then he would start to invest more time with you, maybe bring out the mats or mitts with you, etc. But if you were just someone that was on the fringe, he wouldn't pay that much attention to you. So do you find yourself, or do you think that you're missing some of that insider knowledge that instructor has that he won't share with you because they may look at you as a peripheral part of the gym? Or have you find people who are really sharing in terms of, like, say, the BJJ community?
What do you mean there? Oh, are you saying like as an outsider, if you're a visitor, are people generally welcoming?
Right. Well, no, not welcoming. In terms of, say, for instance, I know that. Have you ever, have you ever experienced where you have a teacher or someone that you notice that they have favorites and they invest a lot of time in certain people that they may seem, do you feel that in the gyms that you go to that you may not frequent as often, that you maybe perhaps they're not sharing some of the more, I guess, central ideas or some of their favorite things with you, or do you feel that they're in?
Yeah,
All right, let's say,
probably. Yeah, they probably aren't unless you're taking a private lesson. There should not really be any reason why they should share their best stuff, honestly, with you, as an but like, oh, unless they're just a very giving person, and there's definitely individuals like that who have
right,
gone past the competitive phase and they're just willing to share and they just love martial arts, and I think that's really awesome. There's a guy named Rob Bernanke over on Island Top Team who helped me a lot there. But
okay,
something ironic I've found is actually opponents. Opponents, actually, because of that mutual respect of going head to head, oddly enough, have become an odd source of knowledge because they help. Like I've had those weird conversations. Hey, you felt really good here. What could I be working on here? Like, and you get like the complete like where like kind of showdown of like where your weaknesses are sometimes if they have
right,
that insight. And one training partner specifically I would say is Trevor Dunn over in Daytona. I had a short grappling match with him. I went
yeah,
for a leg lock and the counter leg locked me after I failed to out wrestle him and went into legs. But anyway,
yeah,
he actually we went back, we trained, went to one of his leg lock classes, and he had striking class as well. And he was one of my main training partners to prepare for my first striking tournament, the IKF, as well.
right,
It's really hard to find skilled people around your way, but not just that, but some people you always also can have like a rhythm with
yeah.
when you're drilling, you know.
So do you think that you're going to be doing any more striking contests soon, or do you think you had your fill with this this bout that you just had, or?
Oh yeah, I'm gonna do a lot more. I'm gonna do a lot more. Probably starting with point kickboxing first.
Okay.
Start small and there. I believe like really strongly now, especially after having a lot of like big injuries in the past.
Yeah.
Like that injury is like the big thing that takes people away from the art or the sport. Like if you can just find a smart way to just like start slow and just build little by little, and once you have the skill like to be confident and like know when to tap and like prevent just like general like body awareness is and proprioception, right, is what prevents injury a lot, right? Because when we first start rolling, we don't know how our body works and end up oftentimes injuring ourselves. And having that additional experience, like when we go into like a high stakes tournament, like let's say MMA, where you can get knocked out, having the experience and body awareness and like little things like boxing, kickboxing, karate, even, and point fighting. Those things all add up together. Even soccer, like there you'll have the footwork. Ballet, you could have the base.
Yeah.
Just something to help build on that.
Okay. Well, so we've covered the pros, we've covered the cons of training at different gyms, etc. Is there anything else that you want to add, or something you thought we maybe have left out of our discussion here?
As far as topics, no, not really. I do think. Oh well, I do think like something that's been very beneficial in both my own journey and a lot of personal friends, and that I've sort of like kind of like mentored. Like they've like been my training partners, and sometimes I corner them at fights or whatever. We've worked together. I've helped them on stuff. They've helped me on stuff, and as they've been starting, but. Those kids that helped me, shout out to James Newberry and Russ Hall. The idea of note taking, and I got that from a couple of older mentors. That was something that I started on and off. Like I'd do it for a while and then I'd quit it. Yeah. But honestly, the odd reason I kept with it was like when I was going through like having trouble just like keeping my brain organized and remembering things. So I started like just taking notes and bringing a notebook everywhere with me. That's why it wasn't just a jiu-jitsu thing. Once I made it like an everything thing, kind of like part of your identity, Then
I have a question. Do you prefer the I know you say you like to write, but do you do any verbal note taking as well?
verbal note taking.
Like, say for instance,
Well,
once I started 10th Planet, I was taking the leg lock labs, and what I would do after I would leave the class, I would get my note recorder, and I would just go through verbally everything that we did in terms of the leg locks, and then I would just listen to it, play it back, so I could the sequence of the leg locks. So the next class, I will be up to speed on what we did before. Do you ever do that, or is it just verbal, or excuse me, written?
that's an awesome idea. Yeah, that's a great idea. Especially like if your hands are hurting or you're tired or something, just don't want to write. It's a great way. I simply like writing because I also like doodling and drawing. So you can frame things and like make it in a way that just kind of pops at you. So like you'll be able to organize things. I like to have a little legend and symbols I use. I like kind of create my own language. So I can organize, like, this is jiu-jitsu, it's like a triangle or something, and if it's like striking, there'll be something else, etc. It's how I organize things, or you start from scratch and you build organization from there. Kind of like how you start anything, your understanding of anything, really. It's just learning. And as an independent learner, like learning from many different sources, or if you're learning from the internet or whatever, something that's very, very important to develop is, number one, a knowledge filter, and number two, kind of like a sense of direction. So you look at like competition, high-level competition. That's always a great filter. So, but like sometimes there are certain things that will come up next that are out of the outlier, and you look at like the best top-level coaches if you want to see what's going to come up next. Like Ryan, basically, if you look at his first DVDs 10 years ago, pretty much everything's all relevant now about how to guard pass, how to the importance of transitions and movement, something which Eddie Bravo expanded on later on. Actually, Ryan Hall used the rolling back attack, I believe, like even before like Eddie Bravo popularized the truck. Ryan just used it like to roll straight to the back mainly.
Oh, he called it a rolling back attack as opposed to the truck, etc.
Yeah, he just called it the rolling back attack. But yeah, it might have been the same time, might not.
Yeah.
But that was the thing that was, and then that's been around like even before that. Eddie credits it to wrestling, of course, the single leg wrestling.
Do you have anything coming up, any competitions or anything that you're going to be participating?
Yeah. I'm competing most of the Arte Suaves since I'm working them, so I should be here. Yeah, this weekend, Friday, Saturday. I'll be competing at Arte Suave. There's two more that I'm looking at coming up next, but possibly some striking ones or some mixed ones, but with interesting rule sets. And there's a lot more because competitions, I'm trying to make it a regular thing to get used to it, because that's the best way you take out nerves. You just keep doing it, and you do it in a controlled environment, and eventually you take out less and less rules, add more and more variables, have more and more play as you gain experience. And that's a safe way to be progressive rather than just getting thrown into the deep end like you're a kid.
Right. Well, hey, man, I appreciate talking with you, man. I've had fun talking about these things today. Is there anything you want to say, any shout outs you want to give before we wrap it up, or?
Okay. Shout out to Retro Grappler Shop for making this first batch of paint rash guards. And if you want to learn the taint sweep, go check out Island Top Team. There's a lot of like really good jiu-jitsu based on like fundamental physics. And then speaking about notebooks, I have these open mat notebooks. They're hardcover, and you can also rip out the pages if you need to and write dates. So if you want to tear your notes and give them to a friend after you take a picture, pages are terrible.
Okay.
That's about it for now.
Okay, and I want to give a shout out to my book. I have a book, Psychology of BJJ. It's available on Amazon or wherever books are sold.
Awesome.
And number of the different things that people go through in terms of concepts, theories, as related to BJJ. A lot of good stories in there. And also, I want to give a shout out to 10th Planet Orange Park and our sister gym, 10th Planet Jax. So thanks, guys, for watching us today. And once again, thanks, Matt. And I'll talk to you later.